kick things off, Monica, with a question I ask everyone. Let's say you're in a sweatshirt that says Chargebacks911, walking down the street, and someone goes, "What does that company do?" What do you tell them?
It's magic. No, just kidding. So what we do is we handle just about anything that has to do with disputes that exist between a buyer and a seller. So we support businesses as well as banks all over the world.
I love it. And when you were the first global company that was really dedicated to chargeback management. So since you founded the company, like what was the landscape like when you first founded the company versus how the industry has evolved since then?
So great question. So now you're kind of taking me back. It almost seems like light years away. So this is maybe 15 years ago. So imagine a world where you search the word chargeback in Google and there's nothing. Like literally there was nothing. Or you ask someone about can they give you advice on chargebacks, and like, you know what, actually that's a pretty taboo subject. Don't talk about it. Don't. The only thing that you should do with chargebacks is refund more. So advice was definitely slim pickings, and probably my biggest obstacle, in fact my number one obstacle, was, believe it or not, actually nobody that I talked to would first believe that they could do anything about chargebacks. They didn't believe that there was any solution that could manage. It was not a science. It was like that, black box, or the problem, the messy closet where you just like throw things in there and just close the door, and you really don't know what's growing in there or how much of a mess it is. But, it just, that was our biggest challenge, is really educating the market and creating awareness. And it's really ironic because most people will say, well, I mean, you kind of pioneered this industry, now you have all these competitors, doesn't life suck? And actually it's great to have competitors, because really what you want is, we started this with a mission to help change the world and defend merchants' rights and really create a much more fair and balanced exchange. And that requires education, promotion, awareness. So getting competitors and really, actually helps pave the way to create more education. And it's a huge addressable market. It's worldwide. We still haven't been able to really even, get to the tip of the iceberg in many of these emerging markets. So there's still a lot of work to do, but yeah, definitely massive change in comparison today, where I think today we probably send cease and desist orders to at least 5 companies, probably every month, for random companies all over the world ripping off our website saying they're Chargebacks911.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a totally different problem. Like now it's like, stop.
But
But
that just shows you're doing something right when people
yeah.
are actively trying to do that.
But clearly, we've gone from a problem that was never being talked about to a problem that is genuinely front and center, and it's front and center pretty much across the world. So, and I'm happy about that, because it still needs to be solved. Not enough has been done to solve the problem, but at least now, we have awareness, which is really that first step.
Interesting. Now, this is one of my favorite questions to ask anyone. This is my little secret. This is my favorite question to ask whenever I meet someone new. I just relate it to business in this situation. What's something that, when it first happened, maybe made you want to cry, and now you can laugh about it with the business?
Oh my gosh. Like, let me pick one. Let's see. When it first happened, it made me want to cry, and now I can laugh about it. Probably having our content copied. It was like, I was devastated. I was like, how could people do that? Or, having an employee or a client and finding, there's all these different companies that have gotten created by people that I trained. And actually today, I think that's a great compliment. Today, I've really never been a person that spends my time looking at our competition and what are they doing. Because if you're doing that, guess what? You're not looking ahead. So, my philosophy is control what you can and actually focus on creating more distance between you and them. And that's always been the best model for success. So today I mean, I probably laugh about it more. I'm not sure that our marketing department will agree with me. They probably still cry. But I mean, maybe it's translated to rage at this point, but either way, it's something we can mine into energy to propel even more momentum.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's the best companies are always the ones that they recognize the competition, but they don't focus solely on what they're doing. Keep moving forward, talk to your customers, learn more, right? And I've had the privilege of interviewing so many great people on the show, and that seems to be one of the biggest piece of advice they've given me is, be aware of your competition, but don't hyper focus on what they're doing, because in the long term, it won't matter. It becomes a distraction, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's all about, I think in payments, it's all about innovation. And really, I think we get lost so many times about what is innovation. It's not taking these 10 things that someone else did and automating it with AI. It's actually, how do you really understand the problem so intimately you can solve it better? You probably don't need those 10 things. So you have to continuously, and we all do it. It's like you start out with complete white canvas and your ideas are brilliant, they're innovative, but then as you develop, we all end up developing a little bit of a fixed mindset. That's challenging, but yeah, the more that you resist the temptation to think this is what someone else is doing, therefore I have to do it, I just have to do it better. It's like, actually, let me understand, where's the world going and what problem do I need to solve and how can I understand that better? Because I really want to resist the influence of how everyone else is solving it, because that's kind of the opposite, right, of true innovation.
I love it. I'm glad you mentioned AI in there, by the way, because this was one of my questions I wanted to ask you. It's not a podcast nowadays if you don't bring AI up at least once
Of
or twice.
course.
So, with chargeback fraud on the rise, how do you see AI and machine learning playing a role in the future of chargeback mitigation and risk management?
I thought you were going to say, how do you see it play a role of creating more chargeback fraud? And yes, it plays a role there as well. So I think, so first of all, love AI. I love actually how much technology, evolution is happening. We're definitely at an unprecedented time that's equally scary, but also super exciting. That there's opportunities to disrupt, change things, reorganize things, and it's very exciting. So when you look at the application of AI, one of the things we do have to recognize is when it comes to chargebacks, unfortunately, this issue involves a human. And when something involves a human, you have to be a little bit more cautious because anything that is technology driven, starts with machine learning, and AI is, a bit more sophisticated, but it really relies on the data input that's continuously training and learning. So in order to get the very best results, then if you don't have clean data coming in, you're not going to have great results going out. So the very best systems for chargebacks and we use AI in a lot of our different systems, but we use it for adaptive technology. In other words, like being able to parse various amounts of data, aggregate that data, like tie in the relationships, understand what it means, because ultimately it is all about how much data do you have access to, how quickly can you make those joins, and then how can you interpret that so that it has some relativity of how it's used with criteria, modeling, and rules. But then secondly, also we use AI to help, really interpret the sentiment of communications. And I think that is, kind of it's a delicate breed, but that natural language is super important when it comes to helping to leverage some automation without disrupting the integrity of how things need to operate. And again, it is about learning. In any industry, whether it's chargebacks, or any type of technology, it's really about understanding what criteria do you need, what are the operators of that criteria, and then what's your criteria for success. And so with AI, we can ingest more data, we can interpret more data, but then we consistently have to test it with very clean data sets to make sure that those specific mechanics are working as expected. So lots of testing is being done, and I think anybody that is looking at how can you use AI to make things more efficient. Lots of automation can be done, but again, in looking at how can you use this to actually reduce the impacts of chargeback fraud, it's a difficult question to answer because it's really you have to be cautious. You can actually create a worse problem if you make the wrong decisions. So it's all about making sure that first and foremost you have complete data integrity, and that's probably the number one thing that I think AI can allow and be leveraged to help businesses with today.
So it's interesting because one of the things I want to ask you too, as a leader, how do you get your team to be on board with implementing AI and continuously finding ways to streamline the parts of the process that AI can help with? And on a separate show, I recently interviewed the CEO of Grammarly, and we were talking about, everyone talks about the jobs that AI will replace, and what we need to talk more of is how it will augment how people work more than anything. And it sounds like that's a big part of, you can't take out fully the human component of what you're doing, right? So how do you get your team on board for, it doesn't just have to be AI, for technologies that help make them better? Because I'm sure you'll always have some that are resistant to change and new technology. So as a leader, how do you address, this is a new technology that can be game changing for our business? How do you get that message across the organization?
So I think today's companies, it's sort of like and we have this so our motto is challenge the status quo, but I'd also say I think that businesses today are really taking a mindset of kind of a back to basics approach, right? So in order to really leverage growth today, you have to have an entrepreneurial mindset. You have to have startup mentality, and startup mentality means it's innovative. It's owner mentality. It's wanting to challenge the status quo and being less afraid of making a mistake, actually confronting, hey, we're going to fail our way to success. We actually want to continue to iterate and figure out exactly how we crack this nut. How do we create something better? So I think, it's less about selling your team on, here's a new approach, this is how we're going to augment. It's more about, guys, why are we here? We're here to change the world. You have to identify what's the why. And the why is, it's exciting. This is a startup. And the thing that AI gives you is, guess what? Every single person in this very stable, growing organization today has the benefit of working for this startup. And this is what AI provides. It's new, it's intelligent, and it really can challenge our mind. It's the most rewarding thing because it's like to any engineer, nobody really wants to do maintenance. It's not exciting. But we get into that mindset of it's safe, it's secure. But at the end of the day, is it really that fun? No, it's not fun. So I think taking an approach, and I'll steal this from Zappos, but we try to really, really underscore the kind of work-life integration. And it's all about, how can how can you really tie in and bolt together your entire team so that you have a mission, and that mission is exciting, and it's not about becoming a cog in a wheel and going through the motions. Like, anybody can do that. It's actually an opportunity to think outside the box, to try new things, to improve new things, and it's fun, and you get to work with your friends, and you get to like change things. So it's the best of both worlds. And when you can create that type of culture, it doesn't matter if you have an engineer that has been doing maintenance projects for the last decade. Actually, everybody wants to feel valued. Everybody wants to feel like they have some ownership, their opinion matters, and they can do different things. And I think the way that technology is moving and migrating in the avenues today really create so many opportunities for our own ingenuity to take us to that next level. And it can be used in all sorts of applications. It's really just about, I think, more so creating that company culture that, it's, you don't need to be afraid of failure. Like, it's literally, let's figure out how we can have fun and explore what's out there.
I'm so glad you mentioned Zappos. Zappos, like the book Delivering Happiness, is probably one of my top three favorite books of all
I
time.
love that too. Yeah.
It's a really good, for anyone that hasn't read it, go check it out. It's good. I read that book. I don't know if Zappos still does this. I think they might have stopped, but they would actually let you go on the website and order. It was a free copy of their culture book, which they'd send you like all the fun things they did with their team and how they were, boosting morale. It was really a cool thing that they were doing. I want to ask you this. So the best companies too, even when they're technically maybe out of what would be defined as a startup, right? They're a more seasoned company now. They still have that startup mentality. So like I get that with you and what you're doing. How do you continue? Because so many companies fall into that trap of they're technically not the startup, right? And then that's when they start to dip. How do you keep your team, excited as a startup?
So, I think, first of all, it happens. Everything goes in ebbs and flows, and you go through cycles. So you're never going to be 100% perfect. And I will say, just from my own lessons, I myself have gone through. Let's have startup mentality. We're all crazy, working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, wearing t-shirts and jeans, sometimes like stained sweats to work, barely sleeping, living on caffeine and pizza. To, what? Actually, we want everyone to wear business attire. Let's actually pretend like we're a bank and see if we get better results. So, I mean, it's about sometimes extremes, but I think keeping that startup mentality, it really ultimately requires, like, just don't take yourself so serious, and actually resist the urge to, like, we don't have an org chart. I will tell you, we have no org chart. What we utilize is also exactly like Zappos. And I've actually had this my entire life in any business that I've had. But it is role-based management, where it's really self-management, management by statistics, and creating an independence and I think that also helps, because for startup mentality, it's really akin to owner mentality. And if you're a startup, there is no such thing as just wearing one hat, fitting in a little box, and doing the same thing every day. Part of the excitement and the stress is, you know what? You don't know what you're doing from day to day. You're putting out a fire for 8 hours a day, and then the other 4 hours, like, you're working on this passion project. And it's so exciting. And we've all been there where, you're working so hard, but you know what? You're having so much fun, it doesn't even feel like work. And we've also been in roles where you are barely working, but it is the hardest that you've ever worked in your life. So, I mean, it can go in both directions. The goal is really, like, just don't take yourself serious. And sometimes that means, shaking things up a bit. So we'll have, for us, so we have a Kanban meeting every single morning. And it's actually open for the whole company to join. And it's, we take any comment from anyone, I actually don't even care if they've only been here for a day. If they have an issue to escalate, then there is no such thing as go to your manager, who goes to another manager, who goes to another manager. Actually, we want to know. And sometimes it's pretty entertaining because I have passionate people that it's like, I feel like we need a boxing ring to resolve this. But the good news is you have passionate people. And and then, shaking things up with contests, recognizing people, and not just recognizing them for, the normal run of the mill, these are all the stats. Something else that we believe in is iterative statistics and KPIs. So in chargebacks, we know that if you only measure the same thing every month after month, well, the world is dynamic. You're probably going to do better on those things. You're going to do worse on everything else because you forgot to measure things that are now becoming more and more relevant. And what you're measuring consistently may not even be relevant. So you have to be willing to constantly confront that change. So we have iterative KPIs, iterative statistics, so that everybody is motivated because they're kind of managed by each other in some ways, and people have an opportunity and they're expected to really have a voice at the table, because at the end of the day, the most successful startup mentality is when you feel that I'm also managed and I'm accountable to everybody in every different department and every team. It's not just I have this direct report or I report to this one person and that's it, and they don't see what I'm doing and I don't have a voice. It's like, actually, we're a whole family, regardless of how large your organization is. It's all about how can we advocate change in the right direction and be willing to try things new. And it doesn't matter. Try something new, and if it doesn't work, you can always go back. It's a lot worse. You never can improve if you aren't measuring things that are the most relevant and you aren't willing to try new things that are going to challenge that status quo.
I love it. What's Monica, what's next for you in the company that really excites you that you can share with us here today?
Let's see. So what can I share? So we have a lot of really exciting things. It's like I am so thankful that I literally have the best team ever. Like in fact, month after month, it gives me chills to think of all the exciting opportunities that we have. Probably the thing that I can talk about would be probably the growth in all the emerging markets. Of course, when it comes to chargebacks and payments and card technology, needless to say, the U.S. definitely the largest market, bar none. But to really look at, and this also is like amazing with what technology has done on the back of COVID and all of the growth that is happening. You listen to my daughter. I'll tell you, she's nearly 18, and just as a segue, and her all of her friends are like, well, we have less opportunity today. The world is harder. The world is this. Actually, you know what? There is so much more opportunity today than there ever has been. It's crazy. Technology is so much more advanced. There's actually so much more need. And nobody should be looking at, my job is going to be replaced. They should be looking at, oh my gosh, what can I do now? Think of what can be done. It's amazing. There's not a single website that exists today that doesn't instantly connect with every person in the entire world. I mean, imagine how amazing that is. And you can do business everywhere. You can translate your website in any type of language. You have all sorts of payment methods. So for us, I love opportunities that are that white canvas approach, where it's like, actually, we're not dealing with legacy infrastructure. We're dealing with, here's a problem to solve. This is a new frontier. Now, how could we build something, from nothing that's going to solve this problem even better than it's ever been solved before? That to me is super exciting. And with the growth of, e-commerce, mobile payments. There's, I think, I just think there's tremendous opportunities, and probably the thing I'm most excited about that I can talk about is that borderless expansion and the opportunity to kind of really democratize a solution that really helps advocate change in the right direction, and yeah, through lots of innovation.
I'd love to ask, because you mentioned it. One of the key things is, so you mentioned your daughter. I'd love to hear, as a parent, what advice do you give to, you have two, is it two daughters?
Yep.
What advice do you give to your daughters about, as they begin to forge their path? If they're in high school, that time will be coming up, right? As they forge their path, like, what do you hope? This is good for the parents listening, right? Like, how do you instill that mentality of, you can really do anything? There's so much happening in the world right now with technology. I would love to hear your thoughts.
So, so I grew up on a farm and a ranch in the middle of nowhere, and I was fortunate to learn a lot of skills that at the time I thought it was slave labor, and my parents called these chores. And my day started at like 5 a.m. I milked cows. I did all sorts of things. So my kids, I think as a parent, probably all of us will recognize, like, TikTok has taken over our lives. No, so has Snapchat. Like, we are a little bit in an age of entitlement, but we have super smart kids. I mean, they train me on how to use the latest, greatest on the iPhone, iPad, all these different things. Like, they're instant on it. The intuitive nature and mental math, all the different skills that they're learning, off the charts. So something that, first and foremost for me, my kids are reminded that I'm not paying for anything. I need them to actually focus on earning their own way. So I think making sure that kids learn, that, and appreciate that, even though there's all these cool things, and some kids are like, you know what, I'm just going to be a TikTok influencer. Okay, great. Whatever you are, it's going to take work, and your job right now while you're in school, this is like your job, and you want to be the best that you can be. Don't focus on, and this is what I do see a lot of kids doing today. Same thing with my own kids. Well, you know what? When I graduate, then I'm going to do this. When I do this, then I'm going to do that. Actually, it starts with developing the right habits now, and that requires discipline. So I'm a big believer. I love sports, music, anything that really cultivates that level of discipline, because those are the habits that you need to succeed in life. And let's face it, every parent, we want success, and we want infectious success, and that independence, right? So to cultivate that requires discipline. When it comes to technology, both of my kids, they've had an aversion. However, I was exactly the same. And what got me into technology, and I try to do this with them as well, is actually I was forced. there were no options for anything else. I really wanted to be a fashion designer. But I moved so often in my later years in high school that every time that I moved, I got to high school at a late stage, I was stuck selecting electives. The home economics class was taken, basket weaving was taken, fashion design was taken, sewing was taken, and I'd get stuck with, the programming class with all of the nerds that I didn't like. But you know what it taught me is, actually, I was good at it, and it was artistic, and I realized I had this aptitude. And the thing is, no child today, whether they're 5 years old or 18, and even 20 something, none of us really know what skill set we have unless we expose it. It's sort of like, if you don't practice something, you're going to lose it. And I truly believe that every one of us has probably an unlimited amount of potential. It's really just where are we going to focus our energy? So as a parent, it's our responsibility to make sure that, yeah, if we have to force it, we're going to have to force it. But you have to expose your kids to things that initially they don't like. There's no kid, I promise, that is going to like to practice piano. But believe it or not, they become concert pianists, and they will love you for it. And maybe you find out, they don't like music, they don't like technology, they don't like something. But the interesting thing with technology is this is playing a role in every field of study in our entire world. So there is no reason, and I wish that schools would do this, but in the interim, as a parent, you can help enforce this. And my kids are starting to take some of those interests. They don't recognize it. Like, I'm building a website because I'm doing this project for art. Like, that is technology, and it's coming, and it's infiltrating. They're great at math and like learning how to apply those things. But I think, it comes down to exposing, making sure that you're taking responsibility to create those good habits at a young age, so they learn the importance of work ethic, of just consistency, of discipline. Love sports, but there's lots of different ways to do that, of course. And then making sure that, you expose them so they have an opportunity to identify if they have an aptitude and if they like it. I think that is a success strategy that we've seen very effective in a lot of other countries. And we can definitely do a better job here as well.
Monica, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast today, and I'm glad you were able to share some of that like parenting advice too. I know the audience will love. That's a welcome addition that we don't often dig into. But you mentioned your daughter. I'm like, I have to take advantage of asking you that parenting question now. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, thank you.